Good to see everybody for the April 2021 meeting of Triangle Association of Freelancers. We've got a terrific guest today and TAF member Michael Venutolo-Montovani, which is perhaps the coolest byline I've ever seen. Mike lives with his family in Chapel Hill, and he has some really awesome credits, including the New York Times, The Bitter Southerner, Guns and Ammo, Our State, Southern Living, Indie Week, and many, many, many others. So when Michael offered to talk a little bit this evening about pitching to these prestige markets and how he approaches that, I was really excited and I said yes. So ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to Michael, please.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me. Props Don on the pronunciation. That was
Is it close?
It was very close. It was very close. But I'm 38 years old. I've known guys for like 35 years that still mess my name up. So you're not, you did a very good job. So Don said before I go into my whole spiel, to give a little background about myself. So I grew up on the Jersey Shore, wrote when I was younger. My mother was a very excellent and active writer. She actually was accepted into Columbia's MFA program, but deferred her acceptance to help support my father in medical school, which to this day, my father very much told her that she should definitely go to Columbia's MFA program, but she wanted to support him. She always said I would get back into it someday, et cetera, et cetera. Unfortunately, she passed away, I think 9 years ago, and never got a chance, but always wrote on the side. Always taught me how to write. So I wrote my high school paper, I wrote my college paper. Never really took any writing classes, which I'll get to in a minute, but I think kind of helped me accidentally find some of the success I've found in the early part of my career. And then my very first job out of college was writing for, I graduated college in 2006, which was at the beginning of the recession, and there was no jobs for a liberal arts major in the world. So I actually moved to Rome for a bit to teach English, but when I came home, I got a job writing for the Jersey Journal, which was a pretty high volume urban newspaper in Jersey City, New Jersey, and was thrown immediately to the wolves. Very first day, a prostitute had been eviscerated, Black Dahlia style, and was left on the side of the highway, leading from Jersey City to Newark. And this is literally my first morning of my first day. And they were like, go ahead, go for it. Go cover the story. And again, I had written about bands. I wrote about music in my college newspaper. I didn't know what I have a very foul mouth and I'm trying real hard to not, because I hear some little ones around. If one slips out, I apologize in advance. So then from there, I got into the record business, which I did from about the age of 24 till about the age of 35 or so. My wife and I decided we wanted to have a family. Me being in bands and being on tour 6, 7, 8 months out of the year was not my idea of fatherhood. So I decided to stop touring and was looking for jobs. And it was kind of tough to find a job when your resume is, a little bit of time at a daily paper and then several years at a record label, several years playing the guitar. Like, there are skills that you learn doing those jobs, but they're not ones that hiring managers, are instilled a lot of confidence with. So I was having a lot of trouble finding a job. And I just started I said, well, I can write. I know how to write. Started kind of pitching stories around and I was like, this will be a thing that kind of holds me over until I get my next job, whatever that may be. But then it kind of started snowballing really fast. And suddenly within like a year, I was making an actual living, a very modest living, as I'm sure you all know. None of us do this for the money. Within a year, I was, I had a byline in the New York Times, Southern Living, along with a ton of stuff in the Indie Week. And it was just kind of by accident that this has all really happened. And so what I had said before about not having any background in journalism, beside a year at a newspaper, having never gone to J school, never really taken any classes, I didn't really know what I was doing which it kind of was a big strength because I didn't know that you shouldn't pitch Esquire when you have no clips, and I didn't know that you shouldn't pitch the New York Times, and I didn't know that you shouldn't pitch the LA Times and Southern Living and these kinds of magazines when you have a dozen clips from the Indie Week to your name. I wasn't aware that those quote unquote rules, which uh, are for the most part complete BS. So I just started pitching places. I started pitching National Geographic, New York Times, Smithsonian, the New Yorker. Just why not? Because I had what I thought were pretty good stories, and obviously a lot of it was. And again, as you all know, as we all know, there are fewer professions out there where you're faced with more no's than probably I would say writing and music, which has been a blast of the last 2 decades for me, and probably acting where the default is no, pass. The yes and the accepted story is the exception to the rule. um so so these stories kind of started coming together. I was writing a lot for the indie, and then started getting these bigger clips, um and then from there was able to one thing I learned in the record business, because you know the saying, the maxim is not what you know, it's who you know. It couldn't be more true in the creative arts, because there is no defined path to success. My father's a physician. If you want to become a doctor, it's very easy. I mean, it's not easy, it's extraordinarily difficult, but it's an easy path. You go to college, you do well, you go to medical school, you do your internship, you do your residency, you become a doctor. That path doesn't exist for us. That path doesn't exist for musicians, for actors. So, you know, um, not having that blueprint, I guess, a lot of people I think see as a kind of, it can be scary. It can certainly, because what do I do? Who knows? And the other thing I've found in the record business in all my years, and in writing in my few years doing this professionally, is that no two success stories are the same. Some people I know have been toiling for years and years and years and are just now getting the kind of clips that I've been fortunate enough to get in the last 2 years. Some people I know play in a band and put out one record, and all of a sudden they're getting, every major label in the world is bidding for them. So the point is that not not really knowing what I was supposed to be doing by the common knowledge was really in the end was a benefit to me. And one thing I've told a lot of people, younger writers, up and coming writers, people who are just starting out, whatever, is there are rules and there are suggestions, and then there are things that I feel like a lot of people are telling you because of their, I don't want to say failures, because that's not the right word, because of their lack of successes, that you shouldn't pitch whomever because they didn't get it, or because everyone they know didn't get it. F that. You be the person to get it. Be the person whose first, whose first byline is an Esquire. So that's my rant. So that brings us to today. So again, as Don said, I've had, New York Times, a bunch, Southern Living, The Bitter Southerner, who I'm doing another piece for. I have a piece coming this spring for National Geographic, Esquire coming soon. I have a book proposal that I'm working on, blah, 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 blah. So what I kind of want to talk about today is pitching, because as a freelancer, I always joke, but it's not really a joke. It's very much rooted in truth that 80% of what I do is pitching and following up. 10% to 15% is research and interviewing, and then 10 to 5% is actually writing. So it's I would say I'm not a freelance writer. I'm a pitcher of ideas, and then if a story is accepted, and then I become a writer. So the first thing you need to do the first and most important thing you need to do in when pitching these bigger outlets, or any outlet, is to not be afraid to pitch these people. I know a lot of people, myself included, they see these big marquee names, whether they be well-known editors, well-known writers, or well-known outlets, and they think, well, there's no way I can get a story in there. Well, try, why not? So, but the important thing is to find the right editor. because big outlets will often have, I mean, so for example, the last New York Times story I published, which ran a couple of weeks ago, was about a snowboarder from Western North Carolina who is Black and is from North Carolina and is one of the best snowboarders in the world, which is amazing. And the crux of the story wasn't necessarily that he was a Black Southern kid in a white Northern sport, as much as it was the environment where he grew up on this tiny mountain created this ultra creative snowboarder. And that's become his signature. It was kind of a nature versus nurture thing. This environment that he was nurtured in, to have any fun on this tiny bump in the Appalachians, he had to go and be super creative. And that's made him this ultra mega star, rising star of snowboarding. So in working with that piece, I worked with 3 different editors. I pitched one, he sent it to someone else. She edited it with me. And then, no, 4, I'm sorry. And then we had a copy editor. And then we had to go back to a different editor after it was copy edited to kind of, I guess, put the wax on the whole thing, if you liken it to a car wash. But to start, I had to find the right editor. And it wasn't just the sports editor. Oftentimes, going back to the record business, when I help, I still dabble in the record business on the side. I have a small label that I run with my father. And I still consult with a lot of younger bands, up and coming bands. And one of the things I tell them is, you don't necessarily, I mean, yes, everybody wants to sign with the biggest managers, right? But if you sign with the biggest manager, you're going to be the smallest podunk band on his big roster. If you sign with a manager who also manages Foo Fighters, that manager has some of the best resources in the record business, but you also have to fight for that manager's attention, and your competition is Dave Grohl. So it's the same concept when it comes to pitching. So I didn't go straight to the editor of the sports section of the New York Times. I found an assistant editor and I pitched her. No, I'm sorry, I pitched him. And then he sent it to a different editor. We worked together. So, and one disclaimer, everything I say is, everything anyone says is all with a grain of salt. There's exceptions to every rule, and most of the rules are exceptions. Sometimes there are times where you go, the stories I published in the New York Times styles, that was straight to the editor of that section. But so I decided that the story may be a little bit more niche. I'm not talking about basketball, NBA basketball. I'm not talking about, the NFL, soccer, European soccer. I was talking about snowboarding is still a relatively niche sport. So maybe an editor with a smaller load on their plate, or a lesser load on their plate, I should say, or maybe a smaller scope, and pitched her, and she accepted it, and we went from there. So the first thing you need to do is find the right editor. Much like, if I'm sure a lot of you have queried and been looking for agents, as I am and have been in the past, you wouldn't pitch an editor who represents middle grade if you're writing a memoir. It's the same concept. Not only that, but it gets even more micro. You can find, if you find these editors and follow them on Twitter, on Instagram, you can find what they're into. The editor who I worked with on the snowboarding story is a big action sports fan. She's also a big runner. If any of you are subscribers to the New York Times running newsletter, she's the woman who recently took over. So I knew that, okay, this is a woman, judging from what she posted on Twitter, judging from what she had written about in the past. I searched her byline, I Googled her byline. That's the person I should pitch. And then from there, it's just a matter of finding her contact, which the really important thing to know is that none of these people are stupid. They know that if their email is easily accessible in a public domain, people are going to pitch them stories. And that's what they expect. If they don't want to be pitched, it'll say, don't pitch me, or pitch me at this email. Or some of the bigger editors, a lot of editors at Esquire, at the New Yorker, at some of the other ones, they scrub their contact from the internet because they don't want to be inundated. And it often comes from kind of knowing people and climbing up the ladder, meeting people, et cetera, personal introductions, that kind of stuff. But for the most part, I would say, I don't know, 75% of people's information is out there. And if you just dig a little bit, if it's not right there, if you just dig a little bit, you find it and put yourself in their shoes. There's no editor in the world who doesn't want a great story. So if you have a great story, again, I think a lot of hesitation for people who are thinking about, oh, I wish I could write for the New York Times. I wish I could write for the LA Weekly or whatever, or a New York Magazine is another good example of I haven't gotten there yet, but I'm in with them and I have an editor who has said, keep pitching me. These are good ideas, but it's not quite there. Though they all want a great story. So, again, if they don't want their names out there, if they don't want to be pitched, they'll either make it explicit that they don't want their names pitched, or, I even think some of the bigger places have in-house teams that are capable of, keeping people's information kind of under wraps. Then again, a lot of it is very easy once you kind of find a format. That's usually how they all are in the across the board when it comes to different outlets. But sorry, I'm sitting in a window. There's my son. And the two worst things that can happen is A, they say no, and B, they don't answer your emails, which again, as you all know, and one thing that I'm trying to change on my own very, very micro level is how the paradigm in writing is just to not answer people, which drives me insane. And I get it. Editors are busy. Writers are busy. However, is it that hard to just have a boilerplate? A lot of these people have assistants. Just email me back. Thanks. It's a pass. That's all I need to know. Too often, I don't get a response, and I think that's just completely unprofessional. But that's a whole different rant. So you're not going to get blacklisted for pitching someone. You're not going to get blacklisted for following up, which is ultra, ultra, ultra important. I can't stress enough how important the follow-up is. Now, you can walk a fine line. You can get blacklisted if you're a pest, if you email the editor every week, every day, whatever. My rule of thumb is no more than 2 follow-ups. So 3 email total, pitch, 2 weeks later follow-up, 1 week later follow-up. If they still don't respond, go elsewhere. But oftentimes you will get a response back after you follow up, and oftentimes people would say, I can't tell you how many stories I've gotten commissioned. The National Geographic one I'm writing now is a great example. If I didn't follow up, I wouldn't have gotten that story. And it's with National Geographic, one of the biggest magazines in the history of printed magazines. And it's, I'm super excited, but it took me 2 follow-ups. And it was on my 3rd email, my 2nd follow-up, in which the editor said, I'm so sorry, this got lost in my spam folder. I'm so happy you followed up. I love this idea. Let's do it. So it's important to know that. And generally, like I said, the rule of thumb is, is usually 2 weeks. If it's timely, put it in the email subject. Because, again, I saw an editor's email inbox once, and it kind of waters down my anger of not responding, but it's insane. The amount of email these people will have to deal with, it's absolutely insane. So if you have something that needs to be, right now, or in the next 3, I need to know in the next 3 weeks. For example, the Time story about the snowboarding. Snowboarding season's almost over. Excuse me. Snowboarding season's almost over. So in that email pitch, in the subject, I wrote timely pitch. Zeb Powell is the next whatever. This way they'll see it. Don't put it in the email. Don't be coy about it. Don't wait to the bottom of your the bottom of your email and say, hey, by the way, I need to know within the next week because this whatever festival I'm writing about, or how, come right out with that. And if anything, it will help you get a pass so you can move on faster, or it'll help you get a quicker yes, which is great. The other thing about finding the right editors is you have to curate your pitch to them. And it's a lot of work, and it's a lot of work that, you won't get paid for. You won't get any reward for, but it's work that could result in a better hit rate for you. So again, this editor that I know had an interest in action sports, I made sure to really lean into that. I pitched that story elsewhere, a more, what's the word? It was a website that was more focused on diversity. So I really leaned into the fact that this is a Black kid doing a thing in a very white sport. So, basically the bulk of your pitch should be kind of the same, but the trimmings, the appetizer and the dessert really should speak to that specific editor. And if you've gone through the efforts of researching the editor, um, you will know kind of what they're looking for. If they have another story that they ran, obviously you don't want to pitch someone who's already written a story. I'm writing a story now for a biking. The reason I'm in Tennessee is we're doing a bicycle race this weekend. I'm a very avid cyclist, and I'm writing a story, an essay about how the only thing equally as fun at age 10 as it was at age 40 is riding bikes with your friends. And so in pitching that essay to different outlets, it kind of had a different approach. For a more lifestyle site, it was very much, hey, like me and my buddies, we're riding bikes together in this pandemic, and it's the only way we can connect. For the biking site, it was, look at what this piece of machinery, how it brings us together. So it's really important to kind of, because again, put yourself in their shoes. If somebody is pitching you a story, and really leaning into and telling you, hey, you like this, you will like this because it kind of, it may make a connection that you may not make in your own head. But the original point of that tangent was that they had already published something. One place had already published something kind of similar. So they had passed on the bike story. So you want to make sure, do the research within the magazine or the website or the paper that, it's okay that people have done stuff that's kind of similar. I mean, Google exists after Yahoo, those, like, there is room in the world for those different things as long as they're unique in their own way and they tell a story that needs to be told. But, you may want to harken back to that. Say, hey, I know you commissioned this story about this snowboarder, in the April 2018 edition of the Times. I was thinking, since you're into snowboarding, basically, you want to be personal, but not overly personal, because that then just comes off as weird. What else do I have here? Oh, and then once you get something, a quick note is that generally what I've found is anywhere from a 10 to a 25% hit rate. 25% on the high side, but some months, some years, I've had 1 out of 4 stories I've pitched accepted. But again, this is a business of no. If I could show you, if I had the technical know-how, which I don't, if I could show you the Excel spreadsheet I have with the hundreds of stories I've pitched and the 35 that have ever been commissioned. So, a lot of people think, oh, I'm pitching, and I'm not getting anything. Well, that's not true. If you pitch 10 stories and you get 1 commission, that's pretty good. If you get 2, that's fantastic. If you get 3 out of those 10, that's great. And if you get anything above that, that's gravy. But the idea is that, again, this goes back to the concept that 80% of my time is spent pitching and very little time is spent writing. But so anywhere from a 10 to a 25%, I feel, is what I've found that I've gotten in talking with other people. I feel like that's pretty common. Once you have this relationship, you have to cultivate it, right? It's like any other relationship. Again, you don't want to be a pest, but send. One thing I do is, if I see stories that I know I'm not the person to write, I have no problem sending, if I have an idea, if I see something, that'll be a great story, but either A, I don't have time, or B, I'm not the person to write that. Send it to the editor. If you've written a story for this editor, it puts your name back on their plate. It keeps your name in the front of their mind that, hey, like, this person has my best interest in mind. This person is helping me out, whatever. So when the time comes for them to either commission your story, or when you say, hey, can I get $1.10 a word instead of $1 a word? Like, they're like, you know what? Yeah, like, Mike sent me that great story, whatever. It's all about cultivating relationships, which eventually leads, hopefully, to them seeking you out, which I'm sure a lot of people in this group have gotten, have had in the past, which is fantastic. Hey, are you interested in doing this? Yeah, I don't have to pitch you. Like, just go, sure, totally. Sometimes that backfires and the editor does want you to go write the story, which has happened to me in the past. One time it worked out. It ended up with me getting a front page story above the fold on the Sunday edition of the New York Times which was the highlight of my life. Like, yeah, it was crazy. I sent that story to the editor at the Times saying, I'm not the guy to write this. And he was like, bullshit, I want you to go write it. And I was like, I can't write about this stuff. And he was like, bullshit, I want you to go write it, which brings to mind the best piece of writing advice I've ever gotten was my mother, who told me that beats are BS. A good writer can write about anything, as long as you know how to tell a story. Beats are good if you have a job and that's your beat. But one thing that we should all strive to do is, yeah, I can write about snowboarding. I can write. So the story it was about how UNC was working on a COVID cure, and they found out that China, Russia, India were all hacking into their system. And I don't know how to write about international espionage, but then when I remembered that, I remember my mother telling me, bullshit, a good writer can write a story about anything. So, but the point is that, you know, it's a relationship. It's a relationship like any other. And it doesn't have to be a one-way street. It doesn't have to be you pitching them and then passing and then accepting eventually. If you have a good news tip, I wouldn't do that with people that you've never had a story accepted to, because then you're just kind of screwing. But again, if it's someone you have a relationship with, someone who has commissioned a couple of stories from you, I feel like I do that a lot with the editor, again, of the style section of the New York Times. I send her stuff all the time. She's commissioned a handful of stories from me, and we have a pretty good relationship. Let's see. Finding the best route to an editor's inbox. I already said that. Okay. When to pitch. So this is totally anecdotal. Someone just commented. Oh, yeah. Thank you. I'm glad you read that story. Yeah, I felt like I might be, I had to watch my back living in Chapel Hill for a little bit, they weren't happy with me. They wouldn't return any of my phone calls for the stories. And it was funny because my wife and I literally live across the street from campus. So I was like, maybe we shouldn't go to any football games this year. But when to pitch, totally anecdotal, but a friend of mine who has written for Time, she's written for Discover, she's written for the New York Times, she's written for everywhere. She's written a beautiful book. She's a fascinating woman. Check her out. Her name is Rachel Lance. She studies, she's a scientist at Duke, and she studies underwater explosion, blast trauma. She works a lot with the Navy, with submariners, et cetera, et cetera. She wrote a wonderful book researching the history of this submarine, who no one really knows how the sailors died in the submarine. And she basically solved the problem that was 170 some years old or whatever. She's writing a book now about how one of the first submariners ever in American history, because submarines were developed in the South, the Confederate Army used slaves as test dummies and would send these slaves into submarines, knowing often they wouldn't work, slaves would die. However, technically, and no one ever wants to admit this, the first American submariner was a black slave. So she's trying to register. Anyway, again, that's a tangent. She told me, and since then I've asked a lot of people about this, and a lot of people have confirmed it, that it's anecdotal, but the best time to pitch an editor is midweek between 7 and 9 a.m. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, 7 and 9 a.m. So I started doing it, and it totally works. I don't know what it is. I mean, going back to when I was working at record labels, I do. Monday, you're catching up from all the shit you missed over the weekend. Friday, you're kind of trying to get to your weekend. You're kind of trying to get everything done. You're also kind of checked out. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, your email inbox is kind of the cleanest it's going to be. And that email is sitting there waiting for you when you first get to your desk. So again, it's a little, I feel like it's a little insider hack that I just learned, and it's totally working. I've been doing it for about 2 months, and it's really, so Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday between 7 and 9 a.m. Excuse me. The other thing that a lot of people are always asking about, and I feel like always kind of nervous about, is simultaneous submissions. Obviously, you want to do simultaneous submissions when something is timely, because you don't have time to wait for them. Oftentimes, I just got a pass on a story today when I was driving out here that I submitted in January. It's not a timely story. It's an essay, no big deal. I'll move on. But you're talking about 4 months that it took this editor to tell me thanks, but no thanks. If that's a timely story, you're SOL. So editors know this. They know you're going to be pitching other people. However, when you do, it's always best to put in the email, due to the timely nature of this piece, or you don't even have to say that. This piece is on submission elsewhere. I will let you know if anyone else commissions it. Or if you want to try and use that to, and again, this works better with editors that you have existing relationships with, you say, hey, I'm sending this to you. I want you to run this because I think this is perfect for you as an editor. I think it's perfect for your magazine or your newspaper. However, if I don't hear back from you by next Friday, I'm going to send it elsewhere. That's all of this is fair game, because it's really unfair to think, as some editors do, that we should be waiting around for them to try and make our livings. Again, if it's timely, that's the most obvious. Hey, I need to know, so I'm sending this to these 10 different places. What you need to do to not put a scarlet letter on yourself, I guess, is you need to tell them if it is accepted elsewhere. So again, going back to the snowboarder, because we were inching toward the end of snowboarding season, I sent it to the Times, I sent it to Outside Magazine, I sent it to Esquire, ESPN, and 3 of them wanted it. And I decided to go with the New York Times because, again, it's the New York Times. But I went back. The first thing I did was, hey, Outside Magazine, I really appreciate that your interest. I hope we can work together in the future. However, this has been commissioned elsewhere. And her response was, wonderful. Send me the link as soon as it's published. I really want to read this story. And I did, and we've been emailing about it all week. So simultaneous submissions is something that people kind of are, I feel like, scared of. Don't be at all. But just have the respect to tell the editors, hey, we're good here. A lot of them won't even ever respond, but don't be afraid to tell people that. Elizabeth, no, I do it on all submissions. Again, Elizabeth asked just on timely submissions or on any submission. I will always send far and wide because, again, I have a kid to feed. I don't have time to wait around for you. Unless it is someone whom I know is gonna want this story or has a big chance to want this story. And in that case, again, I'll usually tell them, don't be afraid of being a little aggressive. Like if anything, it'll light a fire under their butts. But I'll tell them, hey, I'm only sending this to you. This is an exclusive. I won't point at them. Where's my camera? This is an exclusive submission. I'm only sending this to you. However, I need to know if I don't hear by this date. Usually, again, same with the follow-up. I usually give it 2 weeks, again, unless it's timely. If I don't hear back from you by May 1st, I'm sending this elsewhere. Let me know. But definitely on timely submissions. Definitely on timely submissions. Do not be afraid. And then finally, the last thing I wanted to talk about was one thing that, people who have had, I guess, a modicum of success or boatloads of success or whatever, a lot of it is luck and timing. And I'll give you a perfect anecdote of how I ended up writing for the news section of the New York Times. I found the editor who was in charge of the Southern Bureau. His name is Richard Fawcett, great guy. I lived in Carborough for a little while, I believe. And I emailed him out of the blue, and I said, hey, Richard, my name is Michael Venutolo-Montovani. I'm a freelance writer out of Chapel Hill, North Carolina. I just wanted to make the connection. I know that you're the Southern Bureau chief. Would love to talk. If you ever want to talk, I would love to just make the connection, and maybe we could work together in the future. He emailed me back in 20 seconds saying, can you talk right now? I was like, yeah. So I called him, and he's like, you're a godsend. He's like, I just looked at your clips real quick. Now, mind you, I had already published a story or two in the Times. I had already had the Southern Living, so I did have some clips to my name. But he's like, we had a stringer in Carborough who just left to go cover somewhere in the Middle East. He's like, can I get you? Do you want to be on file as a stringer? Yeah, dude. I walked in the house. I said to my wife, I was taking out the trash. I said, I think I just got a stringer gig with the New York Times. She was like, when? When you took out the trash? So it was 100% because I emailed that guy on that day and because their stringer in Carborough had left. And that's led to several bylines in the Times. But more importantly, it's led to a lot of money because I've done a lot of work for them that hasn't gotten bylined, which this is my full-time job. Like, I'm not above doing research. Hey, Mike, can you go to Greensboro and get these court documents? Roger, I'll take your 25 bucks an hour, plus gas money, whatever it is. Um, uh, so, it's led to bylines, but it's led to work, which is great. But again, it was just luck. It was pure dumb luck timing that it just happened perfectly. But the only way that, I hate to be the person that quotes people, but one of my favorite quotes is, I'm a great believer in luck. I find the harder I work, the more I have of it. So the only way to get that kind of luck and to be lucky in that regard is to put yourself out there. But again, it's, a lot of story, come in, buddy. A lot of stories that are commissioned are getting the editor at the right time, getting the editor at the right time. Maybe the editor who bought my story about the snowboarder, if I pitched her 6 months ago, she might not have wanted it for whatever reason. Today, maybe I don't feel like watching a John Cusack movie, but tomorrow I will. It's kind of the same idea. So a lot of it has to do with timing. And really what that boils down to is, like, if you're getting a lot of passes, if you're getting a lot of no's, don't beat yourself up. Like, if your story is good, it'll find a home. You just have to find it that home. Yes, buddy. Say hi. That's Julius.
Hi.
Yeah, black guy was from the swing. So how long are my pitches? Usually 3 or 4 or 5 paragraphs at most, nothing longer than that. Is it kosher to send one email? Definitely do not send bulk emails, ever, never. When you're pitching, when you're saying, hey, sorry, this is accepted, don't ever do that. In the off chance that you accidentally, for this reason and this reason only, in the off chance that you accidentally BCC and don't, in the off chance that you accidentally CC and don't BCC, it would be a very bad look. So don't ever, to everyone. My pitches, usually about, 5 paragraphs, quick elevator pitch, body, and then short bio. A lot of outlets will, and a lot of editors will often say, like, they want you to include that question of, why are you the person to tell the story, which I hate. I'm the person to tell the story because I'm pitching you. Basically, that what they're saying is, what kind of work can you do? How can you get to these people that you say? Which you could say, I have contacts in the cycling industry, which is why I'm going to write a story about Lance Armstrong, and it won't be a problem to get him on the phone. I have contacts in snowboarding and Red Bull, whatever. But that part I always skip. Why am I the person? I don't know, because I had the fucking idea. That's why. Like, do you want the story or not? Like that, excuse my language. Sorry. So it's usually about 5 paragraphs. So 3 kind of body paragraphs, and then the intro, and then your bio at the end. I'm a freelance writer out of Chapel Hill who has contributed to the New York Times, Southern Living, blah, 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 blah. You can check out some links at the clip of my signature, but never longer than that. Again, remembering the fact that, these people have an extraordinary amount of email, extraordinary amount of work to do. They don't want to read a tome. They want to know, because think about how you, yes, buddy, I'll be done very soon. I love you. Think about how you're suggested a story, or how you suggest someone a story. If you're sitting having coffee, you don't say, buckle up, because I'm about to tell you this 25-minute story about this kid from North Carolina who's a snowboarder. You say, oh my God, have you heard about the black kid who's a snowboarder, and he's this world-class snowboarder, and he's from North Carolina? Like, there's a story in the Times about it. That's kind of the way you have to think about it. You have to, the elevator pitch, you have to say to the editor, here's the story right here. And then you and I together will kind of flesh it out. So that's my long way of saying, keep it short.
Mike, I know your family is calling to you, but very quickly, could you tell us just a little bit more about the assignments you have with National Geographic and Esquire? Are both of those for the print editions?
I hope so. So National Geographic is there's a forest in Indiana which is run by the United States Navy. So why does the Navy have a base in Indiana? Well, first of all, the Navy has a base in Indiana because that was the furthest inbound airplanes could get in the post Hiroshima, Nagasaki nuclear era. That was the safest they could be, and that was where they developed a lot of the special naval ordnance. So if adversaries ever wanted to attack the base, they couldn't get there by plane. If it were in Ohio, they could fly a bomber to Ohio and bomb the shit out of it, but they couldn't get to Indiana. What's cool about it is that the forest is a 53,000 acre forest whose sole purpose is to provide wood for the USS Constitution, which is the oldest continuously commissioned ship in the world. It was commissioned in the 1770s, I believe. And it's run by the Navy, which is, it's really cool. So we're working on that one now. And then next year, tentatively, there's a big festival in this tiny town in Italy. And there's a sister city, which is a tiny town in Pennsylvania. And in concurrent weeks, they have these festivals celebrating their patron saints. And the last 2 years, the festivals has been canceled. It was the first time in the history of the Pennsylvania town since the 1920s. It was the sixth time in Italy since 1103 AD that these festivals have been canceled. So, and they're these beautiful, they have the flags and they do the horse racing. So those two, and then the Esquire thing, I'm writing a story about now that we're kind of reaching the end of our pandemic, hopefully, the idea that we're once again allowed to be with our friends, and the platonic relationship is, so I'm writing a story, not an essay per se, about the best, popular music is littered with love songs, but what are the best platonic love songs? What are the best songs to our friends? It was sparked by, if anybody knows the Bruce Springsteen song, Bobby Jean, which Springsteen has never copped to, but is very obviously written about Steven Van Zandt when he left the E Street Band before the making of the Born to Run record. And so it really explores what are some of popular music's best songs to your buddies or your girlfriends. Sure, we all know the Otis Redding, the Broken Heart songs, et cetera, et cetera. So that's those three, I guess, but the first two would be in National Geographic. Yeah.
That's terrific, and congrats on that. Real quick, does anyone else have any other questions for Michael? All right, Michael.
I do
I'm sorry,
have one.
Sarah. Go ahead.
Allison Hill had, hold on real quick. I told her she could email me. Let me just see if I answered it in my rambling. How did I go about getting my first assignment in such well-known publications? Cold pitching, just cold pitching, finding an editor's email, finding the right editor and cold pitching. Did I pitch a specific editor directly? No, no, there was not I'm sorry, or was there a general email? That was the second part. I did pitch a specific editor. I researched and found the editors who I thought would like my stories, and they were both cold pitches.
Okay. I had a quick question. You said
and don't worry about we're good. We're good. I'm in no big rush. I just talk fast. I'm from New Jersey.
Oh, I was just going to ask. You said you're starting a book. What is your book about? What's the genre? What's the gist of it?
So well, there's two that I have right now that I have proposals for that I'm kind of trying to shop. One is when my wife was pregnant, I noticed that there were no, all the books geared towards fathers were bad humor or self-help. And I really wanted just a literary take on fatherhood. I didn't want shitty humor or dude, you're going to be a dad. Get the beer holster with the bottle holster. I'm very much, having come from kind of the world of punk rock and indie rock, if you don't see something in the world, go make it. And so that was kind of the impetus for that. So I wrote this long form letter to my son about how to be a person in the world. And that's kind of it. And then the other one is, again, as we're hopefully coming out of this pandemic, we're going to see, I feel like we're going to see a movement toward travel for travel's sake. It's okay. One of the things that we, oh, he knocked the mattress off the bed. So it's here, I'll go. So it's basically, I want to take a trip with my wife and son. Oh, Julesy, somebody wrote you a note. Who is that? Hey, Jenny wrote you a note, Julesy. So I want to take a trip. I want to drive cross country. I want to ride my bike from Chapel Hill to New York City. And then I want to take an oil, or I mean, a freight ship across the Atlantic and kind of write about, kind of like if anyone's ever read Blue Highways by William Least Heat Moon, one of the best travel books ever. Beautiful, beautiful book. So kind of like that, kind of slow travel and really exploring kind of the ground. Because I mean, if you're talking about, you know, all we talk about is SpaceX and Elon Musk blasting people to Mars, or pneumatic tubes sending us to LA in 45 minutes. But like, why do we have to get to LA in 45 minutes? Can't we drive, you know, or take a bike? So those are the two things that I'm working on, kind of more long form now.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for letting me know.
Liz was curious how you pitched and landed an assignment with Southern Living, which is a notoriously difficult market.
That was what, I'm sorry, I didn't read her email in full. That was what Allison had asked. She said the New York Times and Southern Living. That was a cold email. That one took a little more research because they do not have their emails aren't really as kind of overt and easy to find as some of the other places. And that one, it took a little more digging, but this person had written herself a lot about pizza. And that story was about, I wrote about my favorite pizza places in the South. And as you know, I posited myself as Chapel Hill's, you know, native New Yorker, New Jerseyan, and longtime New York City guy. Like, I know pizza, man. So like, I'm going to tell you, which I'm sure Southerners fucking hated, but you know, yeah, again, that was a cold email. And, you know, I mean, they know you're a reporter, you know, you're a journalist. They you know, where'd you find my email? I dug a little bit. That's what I do for a living. So it's not, but it was a cold email, just kind of written in the right way to the right person at the right time. And again, that's the other thing about pitching too, is you kind of have to make it clear to them, you know, the timeliness. Why does this story need to be told right now? Why do you care that I'm going to drive from Los Angeles to Chapel Hill? Because slow travel is going to see a boom in after the pandemic. I mean, I've talked to so many people who they say they just want to travel. They don't want to go anywhere. A friend of mine put it perfectly. She said, all I want to do is have a martini in an airport bar waiting for my plane. And she's like, I never thought I'd say that, but like so why does this book need to be written right now? That's why. You know, why does this story need to be written right now? Because, you know, all these pizza places were opening up in the South. So yeah.
Awesome. Anybody else have some additional questions? Anybody? I guess not. Mike, this was tremendous. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. We really appreciate it. I agree with pretty much everything you said about pretty much everything. That has been my experience as well. So great advice, much appreciated. And I hope you guys have a good time. And is this a race you need to win, or is just like a getting it done thing?
I'm almost 40 years old. I don't race to win anymore. I just race to have fun.
Well, I hope you guys have a wonderful.
Until I hit 40, I'm racing against everyone who's under 40. So these kids are like 20-year-old bulls. I'm good in the back.
Well, I hope you have a wonderful time.
Thank you. I hope
you guys have a good
you all
time.
having me. Thank you so much.
Go have fun with your family.
Thanks. See ya.
Take care.